Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Painting with Picasso's Grapevine. My name is Leanna Hahn, and I will be your host and teacher for today. Today we're going to start with this beautiful painting. It's called Smoke and Mirrors. We're going to throw one out here that's really easy. We'll kind of be playing with some blending techniques and some very ambiguous flowers, really to give you something to just kind of feel free to go ahead and try at home. Nothing intimidating, something just a lot of fun. Now, as always, we're going to be using acrylics today. And our paints that we're going to be starting out with are basically 4 simple paints. We're going to have black, we're going to have yellow ochre, we're going to have cad yellow light and white. And I typically use 3 paintbrushes on average. I am using the number 12 filbert, I'm using a number 6 filbert, and then a number 1 round. Very nice, tiny little paintbrush. For our supplies, we always make sure we have a cup of water because we'll be washing off our paintbrush. And we always want to make sure that as we're moving from our water back to our canvas that we use a dab rag to kind of dab off any excess water. Water has a tendency to hide up here in the bristles, and when you take it back to your canvas, you'll get drips that will kind of take off all the paint. It can be fixed, but we want to try and avoid it if at all possible. So as always, what we do is we kind of take a look at our painting first and say, okay, where do we start? So obviously, we're going to be starting with our background. Now, does it make a difference on where you start from the top to the bottom, bottom to the top? That really is up to you. Then we're going to go moving to our foreground. Typically, acrylic paints dry in about 7-10 minutes or so. I brought another canvas with us so we can continue going. But then we'll kind of move to our flowers, and we'll have a lot of fun with it. So you can tell this is very loose, it's very ambiguous, it's very nondescript. So this will be very easy, lots of fun, and I hope you'll enjoy it. To start off, we're going to grab our number 12. Go ahead, get it wet. And if you like, go ahead and stick the rest of those brushes right into your cups as well. I am going to choose to start going from the bottom to the top. And so with that, I'm going to grab a little bit of white, grab a little bit of black. Go ahead and mix that right on your palette. And I'm using a fancy paper plate as my palette. And we're going to get some blending going. Go ahead, start putting some left and right motions. Our goal here will have the bottom part be the darker gray, and they will gradually grow up to the top where it's going to be the lightest form of gray. You're going to continue to keep mixing and adding more colors to your palette here. And it's really just a hustle really at this point. We want to go ahead and make sure our strokes are moving horizontally, left to right. Do take some time to go ahead and do the sides of your canvas. This gives you a nice option, so if you wanted to go ahead and hang it on your wall without a frame, you can do that. It has a little bit more of a finished look. I'm not going to worry about too much for today. I'm just kind of showing you what your options are. As we are moving up the canvas, we are going to start introducing more white. Now, this black is going to go very far, so you want to make sure you put a very small amount as you're starting out. As well, we want to move up and down this canvas pretty quickly. You're going to get that best blending effect if your paint is wet. So don't waste too much time making sure it looks perfect before you go on. We want to get some nice coverage here so we can go ahead and get the benefit of that wet on wet blending while it's wet. And then you'll notice too, I sometimes start with my paintbrush in the middle of the canvas just to get some of that paint on the canvas. Once I get coverage, then I will take my paintbrush and move left and right off the canvas. And what that'll do is that'll erase any of those stops and starts on your canvas. You don't want to have the little brush marks all within there. So just take them left and right, and you can do that right now, again, while it's wet. And we're going to continue up. Now I'm running out of white, so I'm just going to grab a little bit more white. These are fabulous dispensers, if you've noticed. They're actually fancy ketchup dispensers. I find that they keep the paints nice and moist, easily dispensed, and you can store them straight up without any drippage. And again, right now I'm grabbing more of my white as I go up towards the top of the canvas. I still want to completely ignore the gray, so I'm going to go down a little bit. As I do that, I'm picking up more of that gray and I'm grabbing it and pulling it up with me as I go closer to the top. This is going to be the biggest thing that you're going to have to practice at home. It's going to be this blending. If you get your blending down, you are a rock star. And we'll continue all the way through the top. So pretty simple. You see how quickly that goes? We don't spend a lot of time. What it does is just gives you some nice interest on the background. So for your foreground, your flowers, you can make them very simple, but it's the layering that you're seeing between the two, the background and the foreground, that kind of gives it more dimension. And there we go. So our background is ready. Now again, this is acrylic paint, and it's going to dry in roughly about 7 to 10 minutes. So for you folks at home, I would just go ahead, let it dry, give it a few minutes. Also grabbing a blow dryer, taking your blow dryer, that'll help you kind of speed it along a little bit nicer, and then you're ready to go for the next stage. Be careful as you go off the side. You'll notice here I've got some flicking. As you're going off the sides of your canvas, you're going to get some flicking. Your neighbors don't like that, and probably your kitchen table either. All right, so what I'll do is I'll bring up our original painting so we can kind of take a quick look at it before we continue on. So we've got some really cool little flowers. They're very ambiguous. They're very light. They're very kind of all over. They're weighted heavier as far as a larger size here at the top, and they kind of get a little smaller as we get to the bottom. Again, the stems are kind of a combination of gray with some white highlights. We've got a little bit of all the colors kind of going in here with some dabbling down at the bottom. Super easy. Now, as always, I'm not going to complete the entire painting here today. I'm going to get you going on most of it, and then you can continue at home and finish it at your leisure. Now, I'm going to start off with my medium paintbrush. Go ahead and dab that off. And I'm going to decide where I'm going to place those flowers. So I'm going to grab the first one. I'm going to say, okay, first one's kind of big. It's up here. And you notice I'm placing this on the canvas, and it's very, very wobbly. There's really no grand picture on how it's supposed to look. They're kind of blob flowers. So they're super easy to do. You really can't mess it up. You can make them oval, you can make them smaller, you can make them a little rounder in shape. Have fun with it. Do what you like, enjoy it. Add a couple more. If you want to layer them on top of each other, that's pretty nice too. And I'll always remind folks, just don't make sure that you make a pattern out of them. Flowers do not grow in patterns. They're going to be all over. So some are going to be clustered closer to each other, some are going to be farther apart. So these two are a little closer. I'm going to grab two more and make these closer as well. If you make them symmetrically placed apart, you're going to find that something's wrong to your eye. You can't figure out what it is, but it looks too much like a pattern, and nature does not have patterns. So we'll just kind of place that out there. Pretty easy. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and put that paintbrush back in our cup, and we're going to move to our number one very, very tiny brush. Now, this brush I need to warn you about, even though it looks very tiny and you're going to expect to get a very tiny line, if you press down on this brush very hard, you're going to get a very fat line. So what you need to do is kind of take it and play with it on a piece of paper and kind of get the pressure, how harsh you have to press to get a very light line, how harsh you have to press to get a very dark line, and get a feel for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working from my gray that we already created. So I'm going to make a little bit of kind of a medium gray. And I'm going to start by making these stems very, very loose. They're kind of all over the place. Not worrying too much about where they start, where they land, how rounded, how straight they are. Again, very loose. Almost like something's taken over, they're doing their own thing, they're kind of dancing on the canvas. Now you'll notice too, I've started with gray. In some areas I've added some black. I've kind of jumped in between and grabbed some more white. I like the white as a highlight because it kind of creates some dimension. If you have two colors, generally a darker color and a lighter color, it really adds some nice dimension to your painting. Let some go in front of the others. For the most part, I'm keeping all the stems behind. All right, so we got our stems on. So the next thing I'm going to do, go ahead and wash that off. We're going to jump back over to our medium brush, and we're going to make some leaves. So I'm going to start out with black as my leaves, and then I'm going to go on top of it and add white as the highlight. So these are just simple little leaves. Nothing too dramatic, nothing too specific. And just kind of decide where you're going to place those leaves. So just grab a few of them, place them out there, have fun with it. If you want more leaves, add some more leaves. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back. Now you can use the same paintbrush if you like. I'm going to go back and grab that very tiny paintbrush. I'm going to grab some white, and I'm going to go on top of those leaves with some white. So this is where I'll always kind of introduce the flashlight effect. So if I had a flashlight and I were pointing a flashlight on my canvas, where would the light shine and where would the darkness shine? Where were the shadows? So if I decided my light is up here, then I'm going to want to put my highlights to each one of these leaves on the same side where that light is shining. And they're just quick wisps. You can skip some if you like. You can add it to all of them, whatever you like. So, if you need to kind of recreate some of the shapes, go ahead and do that now. It's all right. So we've got some stems out here. We've got some leaves. Let's go ahead and add some interest to the flowers that we put on top. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go, as I just did, wash out our little paintbrush. We're going to grab some yellow, some cad yellow. And we're just going to create some squigglies. They're very nondescript. I'm going to grab some white and put some white in with the yellow. Just kind of grabbing, just random. Making them roundish because you want to keep them similar to the pattern that you've made the flowers. So they're kind of rounded little wisps. Add as many as you like, add as few as you like. This is super loose, lots of fun, very non-intimidating, totally a good one to try if this is the first time that you've ever picked up acrylic paints. And just add those little wisps onto the flowers. Now you notice this is going very quick. I'm not spending a lot of time thinking about where the placement of each one of these little wisps are, just going through very quickly. There you go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the centers into those flowers. Using that same paintbrush, go ahead, wash that off. I'm going to move into my black, grab a little bit of black. And don't make them super solid as far as a round circle. I'm kind of making them little blobs. Kind of just goes with the dimension of where we've really created with these flowers. Our flowers are kind of blob flowers, so we don't want the centers to be totally circular. We want them to be a little ambiguous as well. Little blob flowers. So now, second to the last step, we've got 2 more steps on this painting. Super easy, as you can see, super fast. We're going to go through, grab some more of that yellow ochre, and we're just going to create some interest. We're just going to have some little squiggles that kind of go through. Now you'll notice in some areas my paintbrush is not even touching. So it kind of starts the squiggle and then to kind of finish it, sometimes it jumps off the paintbrush or off the canvas. I like that look. Don't worry about having to put so many squiggles on here and pressing so hard that you see every aspect of the line. We like the very nondescript. That's kind of the whole nature of this particular painting. I'm going to do the same thing with some white. Just grabbing a few more whites. You know, it seems like there's like little weeds, little curlicues kind of growing in the background. And then once you feel good with the amount that you've put on the canvas, let's go ahead and add some random little dots. And I'm doing that with the white. I'm going to jump back and forth, add a little bit of the yellow. Again, cautionary, do not put them in patterns. This is where you're going to get stuck into patterns. I'm going to see even disbursement of the little dots, and you don't want that. Cluster some together, err on the side. Have some be very sparingly apart. Decide where you want to put them, how far you want them to come up. But do not create a pattern if at all possible. And I kind of forced myself to avoid patterns by focusing in on one area. So I'll select an area and kind of put a whole bunch here. Move over, put a whole bunch here, and then kind of all over. And of course, at the very end, don't forget, sign your work. A lot of people use their initials, some use their name. You can put it on the bottom right, bottom left, whatever makes you happy. I hope you've actually gained something from this. Hopefully we're taking the scary out of starting a painting. This is a lot of fun, and I hope you're enjoying it at home. Thank you for joining us. If you would like any information on how to create one of these fabulous paintings on your own, do send us an email to info@picassosgrapevine.com. Thank you.